This episode's sponsored by Ridwell. Ever toss something into your recycling bin and just hoped it would get recycled? That's wish cycling, and most of the time, those items don't actually get recycled. Ridwell makes it simple to get it right. Ridwell helps you recycle the things your curbside bin doesn't take, like plastic bags, snack wrappers, pill bottles, and bottle caps. Getting started is easy. Just order a starter kit, fill the bags, send them back for free, and Ridwell takes care of the rest. Start today at ridwell.com.
Most people don't realize how much their personal information is being bought and sold every day. Data brokers are making billions, pulling details about you from public records and the internet, and then packaging and selling it, usually without your consent. That's how your information lands in the hands of scammers, spammers, even stalkers. It's why you get endless robocalls and why ads seem to follow you everywhere. That's where Aura comes in. Aura actively removes your data from broker sites and keeps it off. They also instantly alert you if your information shows up in a breach or on the dark web. But Aura goes beyond data protection. With one app, you get a VPN, antivirus, password manager, spam call protection, dark web monitoring, and even up to $5 million in identity theft insurance, all backed by 24/7 US-based fraud support. Other companies might sell just credit monitoring or just a VPN. Aura gives you all of it, together, at the same price competitors charge for just one service. Start your free trial today at aura.com/remove. Protect yourself now at aura.com/remove.
With Money podcast.
Hello and welcome to 1,000 Natural Shocks, a Bad with Money podcast. I'm your host, Gabe Dunn. Dean, do you want to tell my audience who you are and what you do?
I'm Dean Spade. I have been in movements for liberation for like 30 years. I've written some books. My most popular book is called Mutual Aid. My more recent book is called Love in a Fucked Up World. I have a podcast called Love in a Fucked Up World that's about kind of how we build relationships that can help us sustain in resistance fights, and kind of what comes up both in our interpersonal relationships and in like relationships when we collaborate with one another to fight for things and care for people.
Where did you start 30 years ago?
I mean, I was political in different ways very young, but I got really involved in social movements when Giuliani was mayor of New York in the mid-1990s, and involved with a lot of people who'd been like in ACT UP, involved with a lot of people who were having a very multi-issue fight about how he was kind of trying to make the city a playground for the rich and pushing out sex workers and poor people and expanding who was being sent to Rikers and being really hard on unhoused people and immigrants and people on welfare. And so I was part of a milieu in which people had a very radical, smart, multi-issue politics that really shaped my thinking and introduced me eventually to the prison and police abolitionist movement, and was also part of, like, at that moment, an emerging trans politics that I was part of and that developed more and more. I became a lawyer after that and started a project that was providing free legal help to trans people facing all of those kinds of many issues in prisons and jails and hospitals and schools and homeless shelters and all kinds of places. That was kind of the first several years of my organizing, that kind of stuff.
So when the trans stuff, this was like in the 90s?
Yeah, late 90s, early 2000s.
How was that? Better than now?
The cool thing about now is that so many more people have come out as trans and non-binary. So many more people have been able to learn about us from each other because we have the internet now in a way that we didn't then. There's lots we can be happy about our communities resourcing each other and learning about each other, and just like so many more people, so beautiful. And there's been a lot of really bad things about this kind of mainstreaming, right? Like, so whenever, what I mean when I say mainstreaming is I mean a process by which a hated group becomes more visible and a set of narratives happen. One set of narratives where a bunch of people say, we don't hate them anymore, but actually nothing changes for them. And they pretend we're included, but actually a lot of things stay terrible for us. And then also where more people see us and can hate us more directly, like become all about us, right? So now we're living through a period in which there's nothing new about authoritarianism and fascism organizing themselves around a panic around gender norms and asserting harm to gender outsiders. But right now we are the flavor of the day, and it is incredibly dangerous and uncomfortable. And we were already targets of violence, for my whole lifetime and for the lifetimes of people before me. But there's a certain kind of way in which we're like a special celebrity target in the law and the media right now that has real day-to-day effects on people who live under the authority of awful people, like people who live in prisons and foster care and who are in hospitals get actually more heat day to day, whether or not the law has changed where they live. And there's things like your clinic's closed, you can't get your care anymore, and things are changing with your ID access. And so it's bad on so many levels, and it was bad then. I mean, I was arrested for using a bathroom. That was one of the early things I was known for in the trans community, was having this terribly public bathroom arrest in Grand Central Station. Like, bad things, and, bad things happened to me when I was in jail and with my lawyer. It's been bad for a long time in lots of different ways. And that's because racial colonial capitalism needs the gender binary, and we are uncomfortable threats to that, thank God. And also, for a very long time, we've taken care of each other.
Mhm.
So when I meet young people who are like, wow, it's really scary, they came out during the period of mainstreaming, they're really worried about all these attacks. The thing we turn to in these moments, as we always have, is each other. And so how do we build organizing that helps each other get what we need, whether that's a place to sleep tonight or medicine that we need or whatever it is?
How do you feel with doing organizing and work on a smaller personal level and then balancing that with this is something that nationally we need to change?
People ask me about scale a lot because I wrote that book about mutual aid and I talk about mutual aid a lot. And it's like some people, when they think of mutual aid, they're like, oh, there's this little project in my neighborhood that is running a garden and gives out free food, or there's this project that does a childcare collective and cares for 20 kids. They're like, this stuff is too small. And that's because we've been trained to think about change in the scale of the nation state. And that the promise of that scale is like it'll all be solved through taxation and redistribution. And on top, they will come up with a standard and everyone will get to have that thing. That, of course, is a terrible idea, both because the people running that are always going to use like racialized gendered norms to run that, and because their entire project is a colonial project. I could go on endlessly. It's very bad at responding to crises like hurricanes and fires. It's just a bad scale. The kind of scale that we're talking about is so many people engaged in so many small and medium-sized projects, coordinating with each other, backing each other up, learning from each other's lessons, but also doing it the way that makes sense in this neighborhood, in this community, in this language group, in this religious group, with these people, et cetera. That kind of scale, a bottom-up scale in which we care for each other so much. And people have a hard time imagining right now because most people are demobilized in our society right now. So you don't see a lot of, I just know of these handful of mutual aid projects in my city, definitely not enough for all the, people who are unhoused and who don't have childcare and elders. And, I think it's useful to think about what happened recently in Minneapolis. We saw what more scale can look like because so many people went in the streets and fought back against ICE, chased ICE vehicles, brought their neighbors food, helped their neighbors get a nurse to come over because they needed medical care and couldn't go to the hospital. We can do it enough to have it really, really reach a lot of people, but it means a lot more of us have to get involved. So we got to look at, why are we so demobilized? What are the messages that are telling us to not get together and do stuff, but instead wait to vote, send money to a nonprofit, like kind of post some stuff on social media? That's a lot of what my work has been about, is how do we get people to join and how do we keep them in groups when, of course, we're all imperfect and it's hard to work in groups? That's the question of our time, because we are living in the time when their systems are falling apart and also where their systems are out to get us. So we have to make our own scale of infrastructure, of care and fighting back. And it's like a leap of faith. It's like I'm asking people to give up faith in institutions that have never worked and have faith in ourselves and each other and our own goodness and generosity and our own ability to work through difficulties. And that is a big ask.
That's what's been hard for me, is realizing that, I just don't know how to get people engaged. I really don't. This is probably old hat to you, but when I showed up and the National Guard showed up in Los Angeles in June 2025, I thought that all of my friends would be like, of course, like, let's go down there, let's do it. And the first 6 months of me realizing that no one close to me in my life was going to get involved, talk about it, even do anything, was going to say anything, was going to acknowledge this was going on, that there was not a single person, queer, straight, whatever, that was like interested in acknowledging and doing anything as the National Guard took over downtown. It was so disorienting and so, I don't know. And still to this, it's been a little over a year and I still am just like, I don't know how to think about that or handle that. And I don't know what to do to get people to care?
Yeah, this is a question that is not all that because it's a perennial, really important question. There's a couple things that I say when this comes up all the time in the workshops that I do. One is there's so many disincentives culturally to be mobilized and to be awake to all the agony of what's happening. And there's so much amazing, like gorgeous entertainment and strong weed and stuff that we have to relentlessly invite people. A lot of organizers are like, we put this whole thing on, and not that many people came, and I'm pissed at them for not coming. And it's like we often do in these workshops, like what did it take for you to go out? What did it take for you to stay when you joined a group? We ask ourselves these questions so we can like, oh, are there clues in there? People say things like, oh, someone I knew invited me, or people acted like I mattered when I was there, or I could tell it was making a difference. So just figuring out how we can shape it had a cultural resonance with me. There was music, there was prayer, there was dance, whatever it is that resonates for that person. So that kind of stuff is useful. And then the other thing I would say to your story is when I think this is true for so many people who are political. If you find that you're the most radical person you know, you got to meet more people because we all need, right? Like we all need a support system so that we can keep finding out about how we can have more solidarities. Otherwise, we're just being dragged in the wrong direction. So we can of course stick with our friends who we're still trying to invite, but also we need some people who are inviting us in deeper, or else we're getting stagnated. And that's hard. So facing like, okay, what are the barriers to my own connection with those people in those communities? And how do I double down on finding friends who may not be similar to my other friends in other ways? Now I'm going to have friends who are really different age than me or different subculture or whatever, but it's worth it because they've got this thing I need, this political analysis. Like, because my life has occurred in social movements, my friends are so often not like me, not people I would have picked out at the bar or something, just different in some fundamental ways. But I just need people who care this much and are obsessed with liberation and can feel the pain with me of what I'm letting myself feel about how the world is and what's hard about the defeats we're facing, and, keep me going and who I can keep going. And I also can have friends who are not there and who I love for other reasons and we connect over other parts of our lives. And I'm also inviting them.
Yeah, that's what happened to me over the last year. Exactly that. And the inviting, I mean, it was very interesting. It became like a tax at, like, I'm judgmental. And it was strange to think that, I guess you assume that people, even queer people, even whatever, would jump to get involved. And now my friends are all people that we talk about, we didn't know each other a year ago. We have nothing in common other than, this kind of stuff.
Which is the most important thing, like caring about all life. It's like, but I think that thing that you experienced where people were like, you're being judgmental, there's so much there. Like on the one hand, sometimes we are really judgmental, especially when we're feeling really pissed about something or like waking up to injustice. So how to be loving to people, but also not pull our punches, right? Like not have some kind of thing where I'm not going to tell you, wow, I'm just really surprised that you are doing that thing that like, why do you work for that place that's killing everyone on earth or whatever? I'm actually asking us to deepen our friendship by having real conversations about the things that matter in the world. And for me, sometimes I might do that with going to a friend and being like, because I know you care about life, or because I know you're a feminist, or whatever it is that feels like they're going to be like, yes, I am. I want to share with you this thing I'm thinking about. And I know it might be scary to talk about because we're all living in these contradictions, trying to find ways, but also some people might just, no matter what, be like, you're being judgmental because they're having a moment of judging themselves. And just like having radical friends also helps us sort through those moments. Like, was I fucked up and judgmental, or was that person having a defensive reaction and I want to just be loving and also not take it on,
Is that what you think? Like with people listening, wondering how to do that from all your work and your study and everything, how do you approach people?
I've been a professor at a law school, right? So just try to think about who goes to law school, right? So here I am trying to teach this radical stuff to people who are like, I want to have a good middle class job and, buy a house, or, people are not always picking up when I'm putting down. So I've had to really, really look at like, what does let people soften when they're first hearing about something like police abolition, which is a really scary idea. And I've been teaching this from way before 2020 when that became kind of common. Or when they first hear about trans stuff, or when they first hear about, like any of the stuff I'm trying, let's get rid of borders or whatever. And I'm to law students. So I spend a lot of time with these normies, right? And what I think has worked, and also I'm from a family where there's people voting for Trump and stuff, So what I think helps is seeing the good in the other person when you have the conversation. Because I know you're a feminist, or because I know whatever it is about what they care about. You're trying to find where your road lies together, and you're trying to share vulnerably. It always helps me when I'm like, I'm struggling with this about myself. I'm not acting like I have all the answers. I'm showing this, but I've been hearing these things about what's happening in Gaza that are really disturbing me. I want to talk to you about it because I know you care about whatever. You know what I mean?
Mhm,
Because I know you care about animals and
mhm,
whatever that person's issue is, whatever moves them. They care about children. They have some faith, whatever it is.
mhm.
That's my move is I want to be the safe person where we're exploring this together. Even if I know too that I've figured a lot of it out. Of course, I still have uncertainty. It's honest, right? I got to be honest. I have uncertainty questions about my ethical behavior, living in capitalism, living in the United States of America. Of course, I'm not living my values. So finding a true place in me and asking them to meet me and asking if they're willing to talk about the dilemma I'm having. And then I've also had friends where we were kind of really in it together at some point, and then over the years, they've become a lot less radical and
Mhm.
made life choices that were more towards social norms. And so that's sometimes a really hard conversation because that person might feel really defensive because they know the critique. And so how to be with a friend and be like, I feel some distance between us and I care so much about you. And I've learned so much over the years next to you and from you. And I want to lovingly have this conversation. And that can be really hard. Everybody has uncertainty living in the system. Everybody's like, something's wrong because it is.
I struggle with people saying, "Well, that's just the way it is." And then sometimes I'll end my arguments on Reddit or whatever with, "One day I hope you can dream of a better world." Even people that are not, let's say, your friends or anything like that. But I find my hang up that I come to is they just can't think of a better world. And I don't know how, and that comes with what you were talking about, police abolition or borders or anything like that. It's so hard to help those people. We were talking about this last night because I'm hanging out with a bunch of activist friends that were camping. And we were talking last night about, is it, if you're not already anti ICE, we can't help you? Or is it, there's a way in which maybe we could break this down? Or is that useful at all at this point?
I strongly believe in political education. Yeah, we absolutely cannot give up on people who don't yet have the same memos that we have, because also we don't have the memos other people have. So the
Right.
whole thing is we're building our solidarity our whole lives. There was some moment where you and I both didn't have an no borders framework because very few people are born with that offered to them. So
Hmm.
yeah, we are absolutely recruiting forever. The universe we live in of nationalism tells you it's always been this way and this is the only way it'll ever be. The United States is permanent. Capitalism is permanent. Neoliberalism is permanent. And of course, not true, right? Like the current police state is the largest, most complex one that's ever happened. Everything before this one is better than the one we have now. And
Hmm.
most of the societies that ever lived on the planet never had any police or prisons. So one thing I do, and this is with my students a lot, is just what have you been told is absolutely unchangeable that is constantly changing. Sometimes I show my students this YouTube video that shows you the borders of Europe changing over the course of like 200 years. And you're just like, oh, countries, drop in the bucket. They last a minute, they're over soon. Everything that is constantly changing, was just invented, and its rationales are recycled rationales from some other, failed project. So I think what a lot of abolitionists do is we show all the places and times when people didn't use police, even if it's just, oh, look, here's an island off of Seattle that has no cops on it. Lots of
Hmm.
places in the United States that have very little policing. Or here's a way problems are solved with toddlers where we don't arrest them when they do
Hmm.
things that are antisocial. Or rich people. Rich people basically live in police abolition. They can do all the things that poor people do, really all of them, and not experience consequences. So clearly, this is just, I think, showing both that the system itself is not as coherent as we've been made to believe it is, and that it's recently invented, very harmful, and that the world is full of nothing but alternatives. Every country in the world has less policing and prisons than the US, so those are all alternatives. So when you're at the pinnacle of the worst thing, it's like there's nothing but alternatives.
I mean, you seem to have a very loving and positive way of going about stuff. And do you think that comes from having been in it for so long and that I'm probably a year and a half in and I'm just a ball of anger?
I want to distinguish something.
Yeah.
Anger is really important. It's usually a
Mm.
short feeling, and we should be enraged by all the violence and all the injustice. Resentment is what we want to be careful of. And it's really easy when you become radical to start to resent everyone who's not, everyone who doesn't know what we know, everyone who didn't do enough tasks at the meeting. And that, the famous phrase, resentment is when I take the poison and think you're going to die, right? Resentment is really bad for us. So I think I've spent my life going into periods of resentment and burnout. I think most burnout is from resentment, and then coming back out. And part of it is just being like, I choose to be in this fight because there's nothing else I want to do more than fight for all life. I choose to engage with all the other imperfect people like me to try to figure out how to work together I'm here because I want to be at this boring meeting, or I'm talking to this person who I probably wouldn't usually choose to talk to because they've chosen to be in this struggle too. Actually, I'm not just talking to them. I'm driving them to the hospital. I'm picking them up from the jail. I'm changing their kid's diaper. Being able to stay in awareness that I am choosing this, since I've been in the struggle for so long, spent my life repeating myself, right? Like constantly repeating myself. You could resent that, or I could be like, it is an honor to find ways to talk about these ideas that are so beautiful, that have been honed by so many people who have died for them, that they get to come through my mind, out of my mouth in this lifetime again and again, is an honor. I am so grateful to everyone who made it, that I can live to be 49 years old and still be talking about this stuff, and meet you who's been in this for a year and hear about how it's landing on you, and see that you make this media project because you care about other people knowing. I think I just spiral like gratitude and pleasure. Isn't being a radical so pleasurable? Isn't even having like being in touch with your rage so much more pleasurable than checking out and buying shit on the internet or whatever it is that we're supposed to do instead of being alive? Our lives are short. That's the spirit of it for me, is that kind of savoring, including feeling all the grief. It is brutal out here. People we love are dying, and we're witnessing massive, massive violence and death. Being in touch with that makes it possible to like savor the pleasure of anything we can do to be part of the fight.
That is a lovely way to put it. I think I do feel that I have the ability to carry stuff on. Maybe that's just transness. I don't know. The ability to be like, this isn't new. It's definitely we're the celebrities du jour, but it isn't new in terms of the violence and being treated a certain way. That's a really good way of putting it. I don't know everything. So sometimes when people say, well, how do you you're going to get rid of all the prisons? Like what do you think's going to happen? I have to be like, babe, there are people who have spent their entire lives looking into this. There's books, there's theses, I'm not going to explain it to you in an Instagram comment. If you really are asking me that question, it's fine that I don't know, because there are tons of people who do know and who have looked into it. So if you are genuinely asking me, what do we do without prisons? Then you can find out.
Right. Just, the secret is that Miriam Kaba is the answer key for almost every question, just so you know. Like, she literally, just like Miriam Kaba. She's written the simple version of the answer to every question, probably not every question, but many questions, especially things related to policing, prisons, gender violence, racism. And she's part of this organization called Interrupting Criminalization with Andrea Ritchie and other people. And they have almost everything you could need on their website about criminalization of any kind in any setting, immigration, hospitals and jails, youth facilities. Anyway, it is all out there, and we don't all have to know where it all is. And I think that's the problem too of like the information world we live in. It's like there's this grandiosity. It's like what matters is what kinds of questions people are asking about liberation and a desire to find the answer. And I think that sometimes it's about getting out of a fight with somebody who's not actually looking to find out the answer to their question. They're just wasting your time, because the sincere question, oh my God, what are we going to do if we reorganize our society and don't have police, is like a beautiful, interesting question.
Right.
Not a gotcha question where somehow someone's going to prove that the police are not the largest source of violence in the U.S. Come on.
Right. Well, and then maybe I link them to something, and I give the benefit of the doubt, and I give the reaction.
Because that may be their moment. Maybe they look at it and something changes. It's true. The other thing I'll say from teaching all these years, law students, sometimes people have to have a tantrum right before they change their mind. They have to be like, you're saying that sexual violence doesn't matter because I said that it's not well solved with the police. And what I try to be is like a loving parent during the tantrum. Do it, tantrum it out. Can any of the other students help answer these really important questions? These are good questions. We do care about sexual violence. I'm with you. What else? Let's solve it. So I think letting people, not giving up on people too quickly, who, or if you meet someone and they're just like really reactive about pronouns or something, like, are you kidding me? But then maybe if somebody has the patience and the bandwidth of that moment to stick with them, they might become the most amazing advocate for everyone's freedom, or not surprisingly, become trans themselves.
Yeah.
That is what I'll tell you about the early 2000s. The people who were so transphobic to me when I was their only trans friend, and they all became trans.
I have heard that also from other people, that it was an uphill battle, at least even coming from the lesbian space.
So hard. Gay men, I'm a fag. The homophobia towards trans fags, it's not gone away, but oh my God, it was so bad. People are still doing it, but I think there's more of us able to find, groups and spaces where it's not. But yeah, all that stuff is still happening. TERF stuff is still happening. Transphobia from fags is still happening. It's, but I do think there's just more of us, and we have more venues and outlets and social spaces. I'm so grateful to everyone who's throwing that party or putting on that online reading group. It's so beautiful.
I'm the only trans person in this group. And it was interesting we were watching one of those Jubilee videos where they're arguing, and it was this leftist kid, and he's 21, and he was arguing with MAGA women. And it's like 2 hours long, and they were all watching it. They were shocked by how often he would ask a question that had nothing to do with transness, and the responses from every single person was even just opening with transphobia, not even answering the question, just starting with that as a rote thing. He would say, do you believe that men are better leaders than women? And then someone would get in the chair and would just immediately be like, well, we don't even know what women are anymore, and blah, blah, blah. Like, he would say, do you think Donald Trump is a rapist? And then someone would get in the chair and be like, you know who are rapists? And I was like, this is their number one issue.
Yeah, I mean, and alongside the anti-immigrant thing, which is like so important to them as well. They're very
This episode sponsored by Ridwell. Ever tossed something into your recycling bin and just hoped it would get recycled? That's wish cycling, and most of the time, those items don't actually get recycled. Ridwell makes it simple to get it right. Ridwell helps you recycle the things your curbside bin doesn't take, like plastic bags, snack wrappers, pill bottles, and bottle caps. Getting started is easy. Just order a starter kit, fill the bags, send them back for free, and Ridwell takes care of the rest. Start today at ridwell.com.
Most people don't realize how much their personal information is being bought and sold every day. Data brokers are making billions, pulling details about you from public records and the internet, and then packaging and selling it, usually without your consent. That's how your information lands in the hands of scammers, spammers, even stalkers. It's why you get endless robocalls and why ads seem to follow you everywhere. That's where Aura comes in. Aura actively removes your data from broker sites and keeps it off. They also instantly alert you if your information shows up in a breach or on the dark web. But Aura goes beyond data protection. With one app, you get a VPN, antivirus, password manager, spam call protection, dark web monitoring, and even up to $5 million in identity theft insurance, all backed by 24/7 US-based fraud support. Other companies might sell just credit monitoring or just a VPN. Aura gives you all of it, together, at the same price competitors charge for just one service. Start your free trial today at aura.com/remove. Protect yourself now at aura.com/remove.
together. Okay, this might be a bit of a stretch to bring up right now, but it's so on my mind. I've been re-listening to the classic Sylvia Federici book, Caliban and the Witch, which is a historical book about how basically capitalism was formed and workers divided through a set of things that include particular gender relations in Europe. They basically invent capitalism and colonialism and make it all happen in these horrible ways that it happened around the world, done by Europeans. And she makes such a clear argument about the ways in which they had to divide men and women and create a story about a gender binary and enforce it to make peasants and workers powerless. And, this is the same story you see in colonialism all around the world, how it takes aim at the gender relations of the colonized people and uses them as a rationale for invasion. And, people talk about how, like, the beginning of the Nazi regime, they're like, take aim at homosexuals, and the importance to any authoritarian domination project of asserting a gender relation that can also buy off some set of the population to act against their own interests. And also, this is how racism works, right? Like getting white working class people to vote against their own interests when they vote in a racist way, when they're voting against Black people, so then they vote for rich white people, right? It's the same thing, and they're doing both right now. So the role of making a panic around trans people in making people like these women not see that the agenda that they're supporting is so bad for all women, and bad for them unless they're the hyper rich. It's so deep. It's so deep. That is such a well-worn groove, using the gender binary inventing the gender binary and using it that way to prevent solidarities that would make us all stand up to these hideous monsters who own almost everything in the world and are going to go to space after they burn the world down. It's very intense.
You mentioned being in Berlin. I don't know if you want to talk about it, but you were going around and looking at other countries and ways of doing stuff. And you mentioned Europe being sort of the heart of colonialism and all that. So, like, what have you been seeing in the last year?
Yeah, I think what's maybe most useful to say is that one thing that's really noticeable is that in the US, I think because of the context of settler colonialism, I think people are very atomized and divided from one another. I think from what I see, more addicted to their phones, more individualized in terms of commercialization, and less cultural fabric is intact than in many places I've visited in Southern Europe. And one part of that as well is that the US's property relations were enforced differently than those in Europe, right? Because what you can enforce in the settler colony is much more harsh than what you can enforce in the metropole. So just in general, in Europe, there's been so much more squatting culture and so many more political movements have had autonomous spaces and have been able to keep those spaces going. I visited autonomous domestic violence shelters that are not NGOs and are not part of the government and don't work with the police. I visited large spaces in metropolitan cities where people have squatted huge amounts of public land and have been able to maintain for sometimes 40, 50 years a space where there's free food and gardening and places that people live and workshops for printmaking and fixing your bike. There's kinds of autonomy in the political culture in some places in Europe that are really hard to find in the US. Not that those things have never existed. There's been some squatting in the US at times. There's obviously movements that seek autonomy, like indigenous movements and different anarchist movements and different Black liberation movements and whatnot. But the level of policing and criminalization in the US has made that smaller than certainly than in places like Athens, Greece, or Rome or Barcelona. And so for me, it's been really important. I've, studied movements in these places for many, many years, but I spent some time this year actually visiting more of these people and spending deep time with them and getting to see how that political culture shapes you. And one thing I noticed is people's willingness to be part of an ongoing project, go to a long meeting twice a week or more, spend time in conversation, disagree and not have it be a really big deal. Not like I disagree with you, so now I'm dug in forever. Like I went to these assemblies. They're enjoying it. It doesn't feel like a job to them to go to these very political meetings. Sometimes that political meeting is associated with like your lesbian soccer team, and sometimes it's associated with your print shop, and sometimes it's the trans meeting in your city, or it's associated with a project you're doing to run a squat where refugees are living or whatever. But it's people's willingness to do political culture instead of doing like what I need to be doing is being at home by myself watching Netflix and being kind of socially anxious about other people in my community and not wanting to join any groups. And I think this stuff has been eroding in the US for a long time, like social cohesion. And I think it's just not as eroded in some of the places I visited. People there are complaining about how it's eroding, and there's tons of evictions of squats all over these countries. This is a global wave of horror, but it's been helpful to me to go to places that have a deeper political culture of autonomy, collectivity, where anarchism is more legitimate than in the United States, where the repression against anarchism has been so severe for hundreds of years that most people on the left don't even know what anarchism is and have a misunderstanding of it. So that's all been really, really helpful and hopeful. Seeing people just produce more of their own lives together, meeting people who've squatted. I just met some people who squatted 9 buildings and have 200 families living in them. The scale of mutual aid projects that we don't see in the US because every little thing we do, the cops are like down our throats. If you have food bombs in your town, the cops are arresting people for handing out some lentils. So that, for me, it's been years in the making to spend some time in Europe and go deeper with these kinds of projects that I've studied and try to see how I can be informed and changed by the different kinds of possibilities in different political cultures. And I don't mean to paint a rosy picture. I mean, everything is, as I mentioned, there's right-wing politicians coming up all over, and there's sexism and racism and xenophobia everywhere. But we in the US have much more police, much more ICE, much more severe wealth gap, much more severe degradation of the environment, et cetera.
The criminalization of loitering, the criminalization of sleeping outside.
The gun culture is so different.
Your book, I loved Love in a Fucked Up World. And you
Thank
mentioned disagreeing and people going to these meetings to disagree. My whole life has been confusion around disagreeing with people and how they react to that, which I guess was autism. I don't know. But the confusion of disagreeing with someone, thinking that was fine, and then coming away realizing they thought it was a fight. And that was what really resonated with me about the book. But you're talking about all these collectives and working together and them disagreeing. And can you talk about what you covered in Love in a Fucked Up World?
One thing in that book and in a lot of my work is just how important it is for us to learn how to give and receive feedback. When you live in a carceral culture where there's a feeling like if you do anything wrong, you'll be canceled or go to prison, we're pretty scared to just be like, oh, hey, Gabriel, when you didn't wash the dishes the other night, it inconvenienced the dinner I was trying to make, or hey, when you didn't do your task for the meeting, it felt like this, or I wish we hung out more in this way, or whatever. Like people are really afraid to do that with their friends, lovers, roommates, collaborators on projects, whatever. And when we're all so defensive, right? We're afraid to give feedback because we're afraid the other person will be defensive. And often the person is defensive because we also all are. So being able to, we have to work on both sides of that really hard. Like agreeing with our friends, agreeing in groups we're in, let's try to give each other more direct feedback. Because the alternative is either I talk about you behind your back, people do that a lot, or I save it all up and then blow up at you and ditch you later or ghost on the relationship. All of those things are basically disorganizing for our communities. and make us lose relationships and make us not trust people because we've had so many relationships end that way. So giving and receiving feedback is a huge one. I think in a lot of relationships also trying to be like, oh, what am I actually reacting to? I think a lot of us come up with a rationale. It was the dishes, but actually I felt left out. Or I'm in the political movements, we often have a political rationale for why we're upset. And partly that's true, but also there's often emotional stuff going on and we're not taking account of that piece. Yes, it's really hard being the only trans person in this group. And I feel like people are doing this and that. And I felt left out when you guys went for drinks without me, or I don't feel appreciated for the work I've done, or I'm insecure in this group, or I think this other person's really important. We all need a little more emotional self-awareness so that when we are feeling the strong feeling, we like, oh, I am emotionally activated. I might not be perceiving everything clearly. It's a good time to talk to a friend about what's happening. It's a good time to ask myself if anything's bleeding out sideways from some other part of the interaction. It's a good thing to ask whether, did I overextend? Did I do a bunch of stuff I didn't want to do and now I'm mad at them about it? Or did I not ask for something I need? Am I having a shame spiral? The more we can have awareness about what's going on for us, the less likely we'll just do stuff that's not aligned and break up the connections by being reactive and kind of coming at people or disappearing. So conflict avoidance is huge in this culture. We want to be able to turn lovingly towards conflict. We want to be able to be like, it's okay that Gabriel and I think different things about what should be written on this poster, instead of me withholding it and then being mad about the poster and leaving the group. Or it's okay that we have different standards for how often we clean the fridge. We can actually talk about it and come to something. And then even have to be like, Dean, hey, remember you said you were going to clean the fridge on Thursdays? You didn't. We can turn towards conflict, not meaning that we're trying to fight all the time, but also being like, oh, even if we get in a fight, there's possibility of repair. That doesn't exist in carceral culture. Learning how to give a good apology, I talk about it in the book. Learning how to forgive. Learning how to accept someone's apology, even if it's partial.
What do you mean?
Like, even if you said you were sorry for what you did and you could see how it impacted me and you described that, can I be like, Gabriel's moving towards me? Is there any room here? We can't afford to get rid of everybody, you know?
I know.
It doesn't mean I have to get rid of my feelings, but can I take a step towards you also? Like, can I be not a perfectionist towards myself or towards you? Very, very hard when we're so emotionally reactive. The more I learn to notice I'm having a strong feeling and care for it, and especially if I'm willing to be like, does this come from anywhere else? Kind of feel like right now, this is the way that my brother treated me, or I remember how teachers treated me. It's like, if I can remember my wound is present and be like, not all of my activity is about Gabriel. Gabriel is my practice partner right now in this relationship. Can I communicate clearly? Can I be loving? Can I be boundaried if I need to and say, hey, no, not Tuesday, or no, I can't talk for a whole hour right now, or whatever. So that I'm standing up for myself, but also not be like, I'm going to unleash the torrent that's really coming from the fact that nobody ever listened to me and my family. This is the emotional awareness work that's just really ongoing. And we need to create friendships where people can help us with it. We really need each other so that you trust someone enough for them to be like, hey, Dean, I really am here to comfort you on this, but I don't think you have it quite right about Gabriel. I need to have enough trust for that so that if I'm shit talking you, somebody is like, sweetheart, they're a part of our community.
I try to put my tone in text messages. I'll try to be in parentheses like, this is lighthearted or like something.
Smart.
I've been seeing, this is not new. I got very into the Emma Goldman anarchist groups and all of that because I was working on something about Eve Adams. I don't know if you know, you probably do. This person was around during all of the Emma Goldman stuff and was a lesbian and was like out and had like a tea room that was like a lesbian bar. And her name was Eve Adams, and she dressed like a man and, whatever. We don't know what she would have become, but she had a whole story. Like, she was like part of all this stuff, but she was kind of in the background of every book. And then this wonderful historian named Jonathan Ned Katz wrote,
I know him.
Yes. So he wrote a book just about her. He dug and found everything. And he wrote a book about her. And then he and I were working on a TV show about it that didn't end up going. I read all these books, like individual biographies of all the different people that were in it. And the mess and fighting and drama. And I was like, it made me feel good because it was like, we think of these people as so idols, icons, whatever. Yeah. And meanwhile, they're fighting about like sexting in letters.
All of them. You hear that about the Combahee River Collective, like all these people that we revere. It's part of it. I think what they had that we don't have is they had more in-person interactions.
Exactly.
And I think we really are struggling because we do everything on text. And I've been really moving in relationships where I have the possibility of misunderstanding or where I know I get activated and think somebody's after me or leaving me or whatever it is. I ask us to go to at least voice memo. And I really encourage groups I work with to try not to fight or make decisions and signal groups. If there's a lot of tension or confusion, you need to have a meeting. At least some people need to be like just really watching out for thinking that we can have these disembodied, because we are animals. We are exchanging. So, they say like 90% of communication is nonverbal.
Yep.
So if we just go to the verbal, we're not getting what's going on, and we're likely to like miss opportunities for compassion or things where we would have been able to see someone else's side more clearly.
Right.
It's so important.
And the amount to which I've realized that something's been taken wrong only later, after, even this was a long time ago, but my best friend, who we've been through so many ups and downs, I would say okay to respond to stuff. Oh no, I would say sure. And then like 5 years into the relationship, I realized that she was reading sure. And I was saying sure.
I also hate sure. There's certain people when they respond with sure, I'm just like, okay, you're not that into it. Or like, don't do me any favors, man. I know when I'm doing that it's like, they didn't say that, Dean, but it is, I struggle with sure. I also struggle with texts that begin, hey.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, hey, Gabriel, I've got bad news for you. I'm not going to do what you said. Or what? So there's something like,
I will be so upfront. I'll be like, hey, you're not in trouble. This is not a bad thing. Because it's starting with like, hey, we need to talk, or hey, I have bad news. No, fuck you.
There's something about, hey, yeah, I don't know what it is. But I also, that sometimes I've gotten to a point with one person where I'll just be like, would you mind leaving that as a voice memo instead? I think I might be misinterpreting. I recently heard a meditation teacher say that love is having a generous interpretation.
Yes, I love that.
And it's like, it's hard to do because the thing is, when people are spicy for us, when we're working on something we really care about with them, when we're in love with them, when we want to have sex with them, when we want them to be our roommate, when we think they're cooler than us, whatever, when we think that they want too much for us and we're like, gotta get away, when they're hard, when they're stirring our stuff, it's very hard to have a generous interpretation. It's just like, I think you're either going to save me if you just give me what I want, or you're going to kill me. And we don't acknowledge, that's the emotional awareness thing, just knowing, oh, I'm actually a little bit off right now. I'm not thinking about this. I'm feeling through this big feeling. Nothing wrong with that. But I want to tread carefully before I write my response.
Yeah, I try to go, how you have conflicting thoughts and complexity, other people have that too. So try to extend that to other people, which I do tell other people too, when they're like, that's a thing that I'll say as advice is, how like you think this person's not making sense. Well, sometimes you don't make sense.
Yeah.
And so other people are complex. Think about, they're not an NPC that showed up to talk to you. They came from a whole thing.
And right now, we should assume whoever you're talking to who just acted weird or was weird in the meeting or was weird on the phone or whatever, they might have just learned something new about genocide. Their family member might be trapped in a prison or a jail or Gaza or wherever. They may be dealing with long COVID. They may be dealing with other chronic illness or pain. They may have just been treated transphobically at the doctor. Their beloved friend may have just died. Like, there is so much bad stuff happening. Everybody's under so much duress. They can't pay their rent. So like, if people are a little bit off, how can I pause in taking that personally? There's that Buddhist phrase, nothing is permanent, nothing is personal, nothing is perfect, including me. Can I just be like, whatever I'm feeling right now is going to change. And so I don't have to act on, I'm filled with jealousy or I'm filled with frustration or whatever. And I'm really afraid of you judging me right now or something, and we're all imperfect. And what's happening is probably not personal. Like, most of our feelings are a bunch of recycled garbage we got from internalized capitalism and patriarchy and racism. Is there any chance that the thing that's stabbing me right now doesn't have to do with me, or I didn't come up with it? It's like some meaning that I want to become liberated from, or the person who's saying this to me, they're saying it at a projection about me. They don't even really, they're off on their own thing because they're really tired or whatever.
I'm not perfect. This was so much work to even, I come from a family of narcissistic tendencies. My greatest fear is that I'm like that. So I'm in overdrive, extending grace to people and being like, giving people chances, and sometimes to my own detriment. It's not like you and I are sitting here talking about, for people listening, talking like we're enlightened or something.
Oh God, no. I'm a wreck.
Just, no, I'm an absolute wreck.
The reason I had to write a relationship self-help book is because I needed that kind of book to exist for radicals. I had to do all the stuff that's in that book a lot of times because I wanted to show up my community differently than what this programming that I was given, that I saw myself acting out. And it's like, we're all just going to do it so imperfectly. But I
Mhm.
do think what you're describing, I call the contest of generosity. Like, let's you and I, as long as we relate, try to each win the contest of generosity. That instead
Ooh,
of the contest of resentments and like, well, Gabriel didn't call me back, so I'm not calling him back. And
I
well, you know
hate
what I
that.
mean? That's the way people act, especially in their intimate
I
relationships, but
know.
kind of everywhere. Gabriel didn't do his tasks from the thing, or he didn't do the dishes. So, that leads you to a very sad, small, painful, scarcity little world. My experience also of being in these movements for 30 years is that you never know how that generosity will come back to you. Like
Mhm,
over time, what it produces is just a kind of abundance where
mhm.
there's a lot of people you could call and ask for support or help around something that's happening in crisis. That generosity just produces community, basically.
And say stuff out loud, which is also hard for me. The vulnerability of
Yeah.
being like, "Hey, thank you so much, by the way," even if
Yeah.
it's not natural to me.
Apologize first.
Yes.
Also, people always want to apologize second. But yeah, the thank you thing, like so many groups fall apart because people feel resentful that they're doing so much work and no one's seeing it. If we
Exactly.
just thanked each other more for the work, especially work that doesn't get seen, who cleaned up the room, who called people who didn't make it, like stuff that's often ends up on the hands of women or, just that kind of stuff. The more that we can acknowledge all of that and celebrate it, even if we're losing, even if we didn't win the campaign or whatever, that kind of stuff keeps people in the work, feeling like they matter, feeling like people saw them. Because in the bigger
Exactly.
society, nobody gets seen, nobody matters, everybody's a transaction, everybody's being exploited at
Mhm.
their job. We can give each other the thing that we all crave that is not available in the society: care, relationality, autonomy, belonging, like all of that stuff.
I see people that I very much respect starting beef with each other, and then all the videos become back and forths between the two of them, and the thing that I hear the most is, "This
Mm.
person's a Fed, this person's a Fed, they're on the payroll of the CIA, they're a Fed," whatever, and I'm like, "I think you guys just disagreed."
It's very dangerous to accuse people of being law enforcement who aren't when there is actual law enforcement infiltration of our movements. I think this is a very deep question. It's useful to study the movements of the 60s and 70s in which there was so many assassinations of movement leaders and cops ended up being in high roles in
Mhm,
organizations. Some of the ways to work on that are to have horizontal organizations instead of organizations in which there's a charismatic leader. That can really help because
mm,
it's much easier for authoritarians to infiltrate things that are shaped through hierarchy. Having people have really open lines of communication and know how to give and receive feedback and stuff can help because the feds have often used sexism and sexual relationships to try to go in between people. So having groups actually talk about, oh, what are we going to do when people have sexual relationships in our group? Like, how can we have ethical ways of being together? How can we try not to have dishonesty? How can we think about our sexual behavior as part of our ethical principled dedication to liberation? How can we do work like that together? Because that has been such a big way to drive a wedge in whether it's the feds or just us in our movements, like doing trust building by relating with people, honestly giving and receiving feedback, talking about something when it seems funny, not covering for people who are doing something sketchy, even though they're considered cool or smart or they're older or whatever it is. All of that can make it less ripe a field for actual law enforcement infiltration. We should try as much as possible to be in groups with people, form relationships by collaborating on actual projects, not just making videos. And so that or post. It's okay to make media, absolutely. You make a podcast, I make a podcast, but it's really important to form a trusting community where you're doing collaborative work with people that actually cares for people's daily lives.
right.
Those people will both give you the feedback to help make sure that you don't go off the rails and miss opportunities for solidarity or do things that hurt people. And they'll also be there to catch each other when people get hurt by bad things. So it's like, I think a lot of
Mhm,
people are confused about having an online life and having a community of people who can help you when you're in trouble and who can also hold you accountable. And that's got
mhm,
to be more than just online. Or if it's only online because let's say you can't leave the house because you're dealing with illness or
mhm.
something, it needs to still have like one-on-one dimensions, like more intimate dimensions that are not in front of an audience. It needs to be intimacy building so that there can be kinds of honesty that aren't performative. Because I think a lot of this online attack stuff, I just think people just need some more material things to do with their time.
Yeah, why are we airing the dirty laundry too? A lot of it is like, if you have a disagreement with someone, you don't need to let everybody know about it. Talk
Yeah.
privately,
I think that would be ideal. Yeah, actually directly, especially if someone's really in the same community as you,
right?
try to actually engage with them before you go online about it. I mean, even just like go to the DM before you make the hate post. It's just more community building. You might actually change their mind and build something. I think it's okay that people want to expose fucked up things. Of course, I've spent years being interested in exposing people of unsavory ties to the police or to Zionism. I think there's some of that that's really, really, really vital. but it's hard to tell the difference. I think people get confused about we're taking the mayor as our target, and is that the exact same thing as the other person in my student group? And it's not.
Right.
And having a power analysis and figuring out who can be moved and who is a target because they are in a role like a corporate head or the mayor or whatever. Having some power analysis is important, and the internet can really flatten that.
Power analysis. I love that.
Like we're trying to organize and not just trying to stop other people. If my idea of my organizing is stopping other people from doing things, I need to be more interested in initiating things I believe should happen. Yes, stopping the police. Yes, stopping the corporations. Yes, stopping the ecocide. But like, if I'm just trying to stop other organizers from doing things, just go do the thing you want done and find people to do it with you that way.
Thank you. You can each do your own thing. You don't have to approve of everybody.
Just like where to spend the energy.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for being here. I could talk to you
So
for another
glad
hour.
to hang out with you.
Do you want to tell my audience where to find you and your books and stuff?
Most of my things you can find online for free, a lot of things. The podcast is where all the podcasts usually are. It's called Love in a Fucked Up World. Most of my books are on the Anarchist Library. I have a new edition out of my book Mutual Aid that's got new material, and I don't think that's on the Anarchist Library yet. So that one you can find from, wherever books are. I have social media accounts where we're often posting short video content from the podcast, trying to just get some of these ideas out there.
Are you going to write a book about your travels?
My next book is actually about work. It's called Getting Shit Done in a Fucked Up World. It's a self-help book from a radical perspective about how hard it is to do shit and the ways people get kind of stuck when they try to do what they want to do, why we don't do what we want to do, why we organize ourselves in groups that don't work out, etc.
Yes. Thrilling. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
So nice to meet you.
You too. 1,000 Natural Shocks, a Bad with Money podcast, is hosted by me, Gabe Dunn, and edited by me, Gabe Dunn. Theme song by Zach Sherwin and Sam Barbera. Love you guys. Bye.
Most people don't realize how much their personal information is being bought and sold every day. Data brokers are making billions, pulling details about you from public records and the internet, and then packaging and selling it, usually without your consent. That's how your information lands in the hands of scammers, spammers, even stalkers. It's why you get endless robocalls and why ads seem to follow you everywhere. That's where Aura comes in. Aura actively removes your data from broker sites and keeps it off. They also instantly alert you if your information shows up in a breach or on the dark web. But Aura goes beyond data protection. With one app, you get a VPN, antivirus, password manager, spam call protection, dark web monitoring, and even up to $5 million in identity theft insurance, all backed by 24/7 US-based fraud support. Other companies might sell just credit monitoring or just a VPN. Aura gives you all of it, together, at the same price competitors charge for just one service. Start your free trial today at aura.com/remove. Protect yourself now at aura.com/remove.